my name is Bill McGonigal. I am the administrator of the Boston Housing Authority. I'd like to welcome you to our Housing Service Center. This facility is one of many examples throughout the authority that represents our commitment to serving you, our customer, to the best of our ability. It might interest you to know that the authority is the largest landlord in the city of Boston. Like any good landlord, we strive daily to meet the needs of all of our residents. As testimony to this fact, we have implemented a smoke-free housing policy for our public housing properties and created greener and more energy-efficient housing in order to address the health needs of our families and elderly disabled residents. Residents may also work toward greater economic independence through a family self-sufficiency program or several other educational and job training initiatives. Applicants may choose from many site selections throughout the city to have greater choice in where they live. We hope that your experience with the Boston Housing Authority is a positive one and look forward to working with you throughout the application process. Please know that the BHA staff is willing and eager to help you should you ever have any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Part 2. Policies, Overview of Procedures. The first step in finding a new home with the BHA is to fill out the application, development choice, and priority forms. This application briefing session today will help you through the application process, as well as answer commonly asked questions you may have. Also, we have included a You Need to Know section that highlights key information that will affect your application. Once these forms have been completed, your preliminary application will be processed. Depending on your situation, you will be asked to fill out different forms to help the BHA find the most suitable housing for you. Remember, the most important thing in applying for housing is to complete the application correctly the first time. Therefore, if you have any questions about the application process, the BHA staff will be happy to discuss them with you when the presentation is over. BHA staff must adhere to a confidentiality policy. Without your written permission, we may not discuss any of your application information with anyone who is not listed as part of your BHA application, even if it is a relative or your advocate contacting us by phone with your verbal permission. If you would like a friend, relative, or advocate to have access to your information, please complete and sign an authorization of release form. The Boston Housing Authority has many residences throughout Boston. There are two types of housing assistance that you can choose from with the Boston Housing Authority. The Public Housing Program, which consists of family developments and elderly disabled developments. Within this program, properties are federally funded or state-aided and are regulated by slightly different policies. Within the Public Housing Program, there are family developments, which are for families of one person to as many as 12 related individuals. Bedroom sizes range from studios to a few 6-bedroom units. The BHA calculates the needed bedroom size based on who will reside in the unit with you, which is also called your family composition. Elderly disabled housing, which is for residents who are 62 years of age or older or have a long-term or permanent disability. For state-assisted elderly disabled housing, you must be 60 years of age or have a long-term or permanent disability. Bedroom sizes range from studios to a few 2-bedroom units. The federally funded Section 8 program consists of 3 distinct programs. In order to apply for them, you must qualify as a Priority 1 applicant. We will explain what our priority is in a few minutes. The 3 Section 8 programs are the Section 8 Tenant-Based Housing Choice Voucher Program. This program is presently closed due to lack of funding. This is a mobile voucher that may be used anywhere within the United States. When this waiting list opens, the BHA makes public announcements in the newspaper. This waiting list has not been reopened since 2008. The Section 8 Project-Based Voucher Program includes properties where the BHA has contracts with private landlords. The BHA subsidizes the rent at these properties. Participants who reside in this type of housing for at least 12 months may request to be placed on the BHA's Section 8 tenant-based waiting list. When Section 8 tenant-based vouchers become available, the project-based participants who have been approved for the waiting list may be issued a mobile voucher. The Section 8 Moderate Rehabilitation Program also consists of sites where the BHA has a contract with private landlords. The subsidy is attached to the physical units, and unlike the Section 8 project-based program, may not be converted to a mobile subsidy at a later date. Some of the Section 8 project-based voucher and moderate rehabilitation sites provide supported housing services. Applicants are encouraged to contact the landlords for detailed information about these services. To qualify for some of these properties, you must be 62 years of age or older, or disabled. The Section 8 project-based voucher and moderate rehabilitation properties have bedroom sizes ranging from single-room occupancy, or SROs, where residents share the kitchen and other common areas, to studios and up to 5-bedroom units. Bedroom size is based on the number of people who will be residing with you. Single individuals may qualify for an SRO, studio, or 1-bedroom unit. It is extremely important that you select the housing programs for which you are interested and where you want to reside. If you are uncertain where the various housing sites are located, we strongly advise you to visit the locations so you may make informed decisions. Part 3. Preliminary application for BHA housing. The preliminary application for housing is a 3-part form. All applicants must fill out this form to apply. There are many sections to this form, and you may not know all the information you need to complete it here today. That is okay. You can bring the form back later during the designated dates and times, but remember, the sooner you submit your completed and signed application, the sooner the BHA will be able to determine whether you qualify for the BHA housing programs you select. Line A. The form asks for the full name of the head of household. Line B. For the BHA public housing programs, only if there is a second member of your family who will act jointly with you as co-head of your household. Please print the full name. This means that both the head and co-head will have equal rights to the BHA public housing application. If there isn't a second person, that's okay. Leave this line blank. Please be advised that the head and co-head must be 18 years of age or older or be an emancipated child. Should there be a family breakup, the BHA will determine who will remain active on the selected waiting lists. Lines C and D ask for your complete mailing address. Make sure that the address you put on your form is where you receive your mail, as all BHA correspondence is done through the mail. If we do not hear from you within a reasonable time after a notice has been sent to you, we will remove your application from all waiting lists. It's okay to list a P.O. box or relative or friend's address if you know you will receive mail there. Make sure that the name of the city and the zip code are correct. Line E. Here you will write the address where you are currently residing, only if it is a different address from your mailing address. Line F asks for your daytime and evening telephone number. It is important that we have this information in case we need to contact you. Please indicate the language you speak and read. Line G. In this section, you are asked to complete the information for everyone who will be living with you. It is very important to list every person that will be living with you, as this will determine the size of the home apartment you are offered. Expectant children, children returned to you from foster care or through custody agreements should also be listed. You are to first complete the information for the head and co-head if applicable. The information to be completed for each household member is first name, middle name, last name, sex or gender, age, social security number, if disabled. If you are applying for elderly disabled housing and are not of the required age, you must indicate in this section if you are disabled. You do not need to tell us the nature of the disability, but the disability must be expected to last at least 12 months. Race: 1 for white, 2 for black, 3 for Native American or Native Alaskan, 4 for Asian or Pacific Islander. Ethnicity: Latino or Hispanic. USA citizen. If no, indicate the alien registration number if a USA permanent resident. Income source, i.e., employment, SSI, Social Security, SSDI, veteran benefits, TAFDC, EAEDC, unemployment, etc. Total gross annual income, value of assets, savings, checking, stock, bonds, real estate property value, etc. If no one in your household has eligible immigration status, you will only qualify to apply for our state-assisted public housing program. The guidelines for determining unit size can be different for the public housing and the Housing Choice Section 8 voucher programs. Generally, a single individual may qualify for a single-room occupancy, SRO, studio, or one-bedroom unit. As head of household, you and your spouse or partner, if any, are entitled to a bedroom. 2 children will be assigned to the same bedroom unless they are of opposite sex. Family members of different generations may have to share bedrooms. Live-in personal care attendants who are not family members are also entitled to their own rooms if required 24 hours a day. You may wish to double up household members to get a smaller size unit. However, this is not required. It is totally up to you. Think about this choice, because you will not be able to change your application once you have completed the final eligibility determination and are waiting for a household offer, unless members of your family will be added or deleted from your original family composition. In public housing, to accept a smaller unit than needed for your household, you must sign a form called a unit size waiver. If you elect to be housed in a smaller unit size, you will be considered to be appropriately housed and will not be eligible to apply for transfer based on unit size, called an underhoused transfer, once you are housed with the BHA. If your family composition changes at any time, you must let us know in writing. This is very important because it may affect the time you must wait on our waiting lists. The income and assets of each family member who is 18 or older that will be living in your unit will determine your preliminary eligibility for BHA housing programs. You must list every person's gross income and assets, even if they will not help to pay the rent. There are different income limits applicable to the various BHA housing programs. If your household composition consists of more than 5 persons, we will provide you with a second page so you may list all household members. Line H. This section asks, for public housing, if you or any disabled household member require any special accommodation, such as first floor, elevator-equipped building, wheelchair-accessible unit, accommodation for the hearing or visual impaired, etc., please inform the BHA, as this will determine the type of unit you will be offered. The BHA is able to make accommodations for the visual and hearing impaired at any of its properties. For Section 8 site-based waiting lists, please review each property description carefully to determine if the unit type needed, such as wheelchair accessible, exists at that site. You need to indicate the estimated yearly amount of any special expenses, such as childcare, care of a disabled household member, or mandatory child support or alimony. Do you or your co-head owe money to the BHA from a prior tenancy or to any subsidized housing program? If you do owe a past debt to the BHA or any other subsidized housing agency, you will need to pay the full amount before you are contacted by the BHA to begin your final eligibility process. This is the process when the BHA will determine if you will meet housing program requirements and are deemed a suitable tenant or participant for the BHA. Are you or anyone in your household subject to a lifetime sex offender registration? Have you or anyone in the household been convicted or found guilty of a crime? Have you or anyone in your household been convicted or found guilty of producing methamphetamine? Please be advised that the BHA will obtain criminal record checks for all household members 14 years old and older, or whatever age as defined by our policies and by our regulatory agencies. A member of your household is pregnant? If yes, please indicate the name of the individual and her due date. Section I. Here you need to check off for the housing programs for which you are applying. Please make sure you complete the choice forms that are included with the application indicating at which properties you wish to reside. Once you have completed this application, you and your co-head, if applicable, must sign and date it. Let's talk about the site-based waiting list. Select the housing programs for which you want to apply. You must choose developments and/or sites from the list of locations we are providing to you with the preliminary application. You must make development choices, even if you are applying as a priority applicant. Only select the housing programs and locations where you would like to reside. If you are not sure, again, we encourage you to visit the neighborhoods and the properties before submitting your application. Please be advised that only applicants who qualify for Priority 1 may apply for the Section 8 project-based voucher and moderate rehabilitation programs. You must submit the required priority third-party verification when you submit your completed application. We will explain the priorities next. Part 4. Priority Status. Self-Certification Forms Procedure. Now, let's talk about priority status. As a priority status applicant, your application will be ranked higher on the selected waiting list than non-priority applicants within the family and elderly disabled public housing programs, and within any Section 8 program that may be open for non-priority applicants. Note that as a priority applicant and after successfully completing the final eligibility screening process, you will be offered the next available unit at any one of the selected locations of your choice within the public housing or Section 8 project-based voucher or moderate rehabilitation programs. Failure to accept a housing offer of appropriate size and type at a development or site you selected will result in your application being withdrawn for all public housing or all Section 8 project-based voucher and moderate rehabilitation waiting lists. In addition, you will have to reapply if still interested in BHA housing. We will now review the Priority Status Self-Certification forms. This is a teal-colored form for the Public Housing Program and a tan-colored form for the Housing Choice Voucher, Section 8 Project-Based Voucher, and Moderate Rehabilitation Programs. If you need assistance filling out these forms because of a disability, please ask a BHA staff person for assistance when submitting your application. Let's first discuss the difference between priority status and non-priority status applications. Both priority forms describe the different housing situations that you must currently be experiencing in order to qualify for priority status. Most priorities for the public housing and the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher programs are the same. There are a few priorities that are applicable only to specific housing programs. BHA staff will be able to assist you with questions at the BHA's Housing Service Center during the scheduled business hours. You may qualify for priority status if you are currently in any of the following housing situations. Let's start with the priorities that are the same for both housing programs. You are a disaster victim and your home is uninhabitable due to a fire or flood. You live in condemned housing where your home has been declared uninhabitable. Court-ordered no-fault eviction and other landlord action. Court-ordered eviction means that you have been evicted by a court of law through no fault of your own. Domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, sexual assault. You qualify for domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, or sexual assault if you have fled your home because of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. Violence must be directed towards you in your home. It does not include violence that occurs around your home or neighborhood. Government displacement. Government displacement requires that you be notified by a public agency that you must move out within the next 6 months because of a planned public improvement or development program, such as highway construction or urban renewal. Displacement to avoid reprisal or witness protection. Displacement to avoid reprisal or witness protection happens when a household must vacate or cannot return to their home because a family member provided information to a law enforcement authority about criminal activity, and law enforcement officials recommend moving the household to minimize the risk of violence against them. Displacement by hate crimes. An applicant is considered a victim of hate crimes if they, or a member of their household, has been the victim of a hate crime at their home, or are fearful of returning to their home due to hate crimes. Displacement by inaccessibility of the dwelling unit. An applicant can also be considered a priority applicant if a member of the household has a disability that makes the person unable to use their unit and the property owner is not legally obligated to make changes to the unit to make it accessible. Homelessness. To qualify for homelessness, you must be living in a shelter, living in a hotel or motel, without any fixed adequate nighttime housing. Persons residing doubled up with family or friends in BHA, private, or other subsidized housing do not qualify as homeless. There are 3 additional situations that can qualify you for priority status. Graduates of project-based units who have fulfilled supported housing service goals. This is a Priority 1 status applicable to both the public housing and the Section 8 housing programs, and it is for elderly or disabled individuals who have outgrown or completed the supported housing services at their current transitional housing program. Excessive rent burden. This is a lower-level priority status, and it is only applicable to the public housing elderly disabled waiting lists. Excessive rent burden requires that your household pays more than 50% of your total monthly gross income for rent. Rent includes utilities, but not cable TV or telephone. Household income includes income from everyone in your household, even if they do not help to pay the rent. Landlord displacement. This is a lower-level priority status, and it is only applicable to the public housing elderly disabled waiting lists. You have experienced or are about to experience landlord displacement. It describes landlord action where you had to leave or anticipate leaving your dwelling unit within the next 6 months and is not related to a rent increase. You may check off as many priorities that apply to you right now. If your situation changes at any time, you must let us know. A change in priority status affects the time you will be on our waiting lists. By checking off any situation on this form, you may qualify for priority status. To prove your claim, a BHA staff member will give you another form that applies to your situation. This form asks a third party, such as a police officer, shelter worker, physician, or landlord, to verify your claim. You will receive the appropriate form for your situation when you submit your application. Each form indicates who is the appropriate third party that may verify your claimed housing situation. Remember, in order to apply for the Housing Choice Section 8 project-based voucher and moderate rehabilitation programs, you must be in one of the described Priority 1 categories. You must submit the appropriate Priority 1 third-party verification certificate with your completed application at the same time. Today you may take all the required documents with you and return them to us at the designated dates and times once all the forms have been completed and signed. Incomplete applications will not be accepted. Remember, you will not receive priority status until your claim has been received and verified. Until the BHA receives this form that a third party must sign, you will only qualify for the public housing waiting lists and you will be considered as a non-priority or standard applicant. The self-certification statement is at the bottom of this form. Please read through the statement and fill out the information below. No application will be processed unless all the information is completed at the bottom of this form and you have signed your name. Remember, not everyone is eligible for priority status. If no categories apply to you, that's okay. If your living situation changes later, then come back to the BHA and we will gladly assist you. Part 5. Preference Self-Certification Forms. There are 2 preference self-certification forms. The green lime color form is for the public housing programs, and the pink color form is for the Section 8 housing programs. The BHA gives preference to an applicant on the waiting list if they qualify for one or more of the preference categories established by the BHA for its public housing and Section 8 programs, such as veteran, disabled, and others listed on the preference self-certification forms. Preference points are cumulative and are added to the applicant's priority points, if any, to determine an applicant's position on each of the BHA waiting list. Not everyone is eligible for preference status. If no categories apply to you now, you may update your preferences at a later time. Part 6. What happens now? Congratulations! You've made it through the first steps of applying for BHA housing. Here's what to expect next. BHA staff will help you with any questions you have about the application process. Once the BHA staff have determined whether or not you are a priority applicant, they will then hand you the various forms necessary to be completed by a third party, so that we can verify if you will be a priority candidate. Those are the third-party forms we talked about earlier. Such forms must be signed by an appropriate official and must be returned to the BHA office to finish your priority application. Written notification with client control number. Once the BHA has received all the necessary application and forms, you will be notified if you are income eligible based on the information you have self-declared. If you are, the BHA will send you a client control number. Save this number. It is your application number. At this point, you are placed on a preliminary eligibility waiting list. Your place on the list is determined by the date we receive your completed application. This is why you should get your application in as soon as possible. Your application must be complete. You will not be placed on a waiting list, no exceptions, unless your application is complete. When your name nears the top of the preliminary eligibility list, then the BHA begins the process of determining final eligibility. The BHA performs a thorough review and screening of every applicant for its public housing and Section 8 programs. We are looking for people who can show us that they will be good tenants and neighbors. You will be asked to attend a personal interview with an occupancy specialist or a leasing officer. You will need to provide information such as income, birth certificates, marriage certificates, and Social Security cards. For public housing, you will need to include your housing history for the past few years. In order to determine if you will be a good tenant in public housing, the BHA will obtain references from people who know you, such as landlords, neighbors, and friends. This is required for all BHA public housing programs as well as any other BHA-owned property. We may also need to visit you in your home. The BHA takes criminal activity very seriously and will obtain criminal history information on every applicant and their household members. If all of the information we receive is positive, you can then be approved for BHA public housing or Section 8 rental assistance. If you have been a resident at the BHA or other public housing or any subsidized agency before, and you have an outstanding bad debt, you must pay this before your application reaches the final eligibility screening process. Failure to do so will result in your application being determined ineligible for BHA housing. If you are granted final eligibility for BHA public housing, you will be offered housing at one of the locations you have selected. Be informed that BHA officials cannot advise you as to where you should live. If you are granted final eligibility approval for the Section 8 project-based or moderate rehabilitation housing programs, you will be referred to the private landlords. Each landlord requires that you successfully complete their housing eligibility screening process before a housing offer is made. You must successfully respond and complete the private landlord screening process. Few more guidelines. There are only a few more things you should be aware of when you are applying for housing with the Boston Housing Authority. Reasons to notify BHA. You must always notify the BHA Occupancy Department in writing if your address, telephone number, household composition, income, or need for housing changes. You can notify us in writing or by returning to this office. Our address is the Boston Housing Authority, Occupancy Department, 56 Chauncey Street, Boston, Massachusetts, 02111, and our telephone number is 617-988-3400. You may call this number to check the status of your application. You may also visit our website at www.bostonhousing.org. Remember, the BHA will provide you with a unique client control number. Please keep that number and use it when calling or visiting our office to check on the status of your application. Important: if the BHA sends you a notice and it is returned by the post office, your name will be removed from all waiting lists. If that happens, you will have to start the process over by reapplying. When you do receive notices from the BHA, you must reply within the allotted time. It is a policy of the BHA to provide housing and related services without regard to race, color, creed, national origin, marital status, handicap, sex, religion, source of income, military service, presence of children, or sexual preference. If you feel at any time that you have been discriminated against on the basis of these categories, you may file a complaint with the BHA's Office of Civil Rights, located at 52 Chauncey Street on the 9th floor. Or you may file a complaint with the Boston Fair Housing Commission, the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, or the HUD Regional Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. Part 7. Close. Thank you. This concludes our presentation for the preliminary application process. You may hand in your application today if you wish. We will give you a pink time-stamped copy, which you should keep as your receipt. If you prefer, or if applying for any of the Section 8 programs, and you do not have the required Priority 1 third-party verification today, you may finish your application at home. That is okay. You will need to return the completed and signed preliminary application and any claimed Priority 1 third-party verification in person during the designated dates and times. Thank you for your interest in housing with the Boston Housing Authority. Please let a BHA staff person know if you need assistance.